So I'm going to apologise off top because in the process of making this video I kind of realised that I don't actually have a goal or something in mind that I wanted to achieve with it other than just ranting about the current state of the industry. Hi, my name is Inept Saiyan. Welcome to my YouTube channel where I upload badly edited videos so infrequently that you might think my channel or I have died. Don't worry, I'm not dead yet, but I'm sure with the amount of Pepsi Max flowing through my veins, it won't be long. Ugh, honestly, it's like crack. So today I've gone through the process of setting up my phone on a stand, which is also on a Blu-ray box set of the Matrix trilogy because the stand isn't tall enough, because I wanted to talk about games, more specifically video games, and more specifically than that, open world games, because ... Oh my god, I am so tired. I don't know what happened to this industry over the last decade or so. Everything was fine and dandy on the way to check out this cool thing town, and then we whipped that steering wheel into f you and your family'sville. Now, I've been playing games for a very long time. I'm talking back when pop stars looked like this, Batman looked like this, and I looked like this, and games looked like this, and this. I know we've come a long way since the Pongs and the Bleep Bleeps and the Bloop Bloops, but boy oh boy does it feel like sometimes we're on the worst possible timeline with how everything could have played out. A good few years back I started noticing a bit of a weird trend when it came to developers and publishers promoting their brand new game. We're all very familiar with the cliched line of, you see that mountain over there? Well, you can actually climb that. And for some reason over time when it comes to developers promoting their new game, I kind of hear the same thing over and over again, which is, this is the biggest game we've ever created, or it would take this many hours to walk from one end of the map to the other. The latest offender, and part of the inspiration for this very video, is Techland, who are the developers of Dying Light and Dying Light 2, who, in the promotion for Dying Light 2, decided to jump on Twitter and shout about how it would take 500 hours to 100% complete their game. Now, I saw this tweet, read it, shook my head out of disbelief, and then read it again, which led me to say, because I'm so completely baffled as to how this is a selling point for a new game. Look, I know everybody plays games for different reasons, and this video is only my subjective garbage opinion on things, but do you know what I really enjoy about playing games and find really satisfying? Go ahead, guess. You know what, in fact, I'll make it a multiple choice question. Okay, is it A, doing the same bland task over and over again, B, arbitrarily clearing a map of its icons, or C, saying goodbye to my wife and child for the same length of time that it would take to learn a new language? I'll give you a few seconds to decide. Now, I don't know what you guessed because this is a pre-recorded video and that's not how communication works, but whatever you guessed, you are wrong because the answer is secret option D, finishing the game. I'm a big fan of endings. I like closing things out, wrapping things up and reaching the end of a journey. But even if you ignore that aspect for a moment, I still feel like a lot of games today are missing the point on what makes games so cool. Everyone has their own story about how they got into games, and my personal one basically boils down to 4 core games, which are Street Fighter 2, Metal Gear Solid, Pokemon Red, and Halo Combat Evolved. The reason for this is because I feel like each game introduced me to one of the core aspects of what makes games so much more interesting than any other form of entertainment. Street Fighter 2 was the first game I ever played. I saw the karate man with the red bandana around his head and thought, who is this guy? Why is there blue fire coming out of his hands? Is he a wizard? I didn't know what I was seeing, but I knew it was cool, and I knew I wanted to be a part of it, and then boom, my mind was blown for the first time as I realised, oh my god! Wow! Games can be this much fun. Skip along a few years later and I obtain a PlayStation 1 and a copy of Metal Gear Solid, and boom, mind blown again as I realise, you mean these games can be cinematic and tell deep stories? The following year, Pokemon is all the rage, and I pick up a copy of Pokemon Red from my local Toys R Us, and then boom, mind blown again as I realise, you mean me and all of my friends are going to have different experiences with this game and choose how we progress and end up with completely different lineups? The fourth and final mind explosion was the day I was gifted an original Xbox and loaded up Halo Combat Evolved for the first time, and boom, once again. You mean games can look this good? Now, I know that was a bit of a long way to explain all of that, but the point I was trying to make is that the reason I got hooked on games, and the reason I think they are as cool as they are, is because even though the first objective with any game is for the player to have fun, the real special ones blow your mind in the ways that I just described. Once again, it could just be me, but I feel like a lot of big games today fail to stick the landing on any of the things that I just mentioned, and basically aim to just be the only thing that you ever play. The best recent example I can give to explain my point a little further is by taking a look at the most recent Assassin's Creed, Valhalla. Now, I picked up that game for two reasons. One, because I had a brand new shiny Xbox Series X that I needed to test out games on, and two, because I'm an idiot. Now, I knew exactly what kind of experience was waiting for me in Valhalla after playing Odyssey 2 years prior and giving up on it after about 10 hours of repetitive side quests, but Ubisoft saw me, bags packed by the door, about to walk out on them, and said, no wait, I can change, and told us all how it was going to be different next time, and they took an extra year of development, and I jumped into Valhalla, fingers crossed. I played 97 hours of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. More evidence that I am in fact an idiot. And while it looked nice and the combat was okay, there was nothing about the game that was memorable, spectacular, or remarkable. It was just all fine. I did all of the side quests, found all of the collectibles, and had all of the best gear. Yet, for some reason by the end of it, I felt incredibly unsatisfied, and most importantly, felt like I had wasted my time. I have a general rule of thumb for games like this, which is pretty simple. If I achieve 100% completion of your game, and by the end of it feel like I could have had just as good of a time, if not a better one, if the game was only half as long as it actually is, you done goofed up. Now, I know what you're thinking.
But saying you're torturing yourself, you don't actually have to do any of that stuff. All of that stuff is optional.
And to that I say, shut up, you're not even my real dad. I know I don't have to do any of this stuff, but I refuse to believe that the people who made this game did so with the intention of players potentially missing about 80% of the content. You made all of this content, but you didn't take the time to make it worth my time. I even did a little bit of research based on the stats of my achievements in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and apparently only 19% of players finished the final mission, only 15% of players killed all of the bosses, and a measly 2% cleared all of the activities off the map. So, with those stats in mind, I ask you, who the hell is this content for? And Assassin's Creed isn't even the only game that's doing this nowadays. I'm talking Far Cry, Halo, Ghost of Tsushima, Death Stranding, Dragon Ball Z, Watch Dogs, Spider-Man, Forza Horizon, those Middle-earth games, and Mirror's Edge. All of these are games which I thought would have been better if they had respected my time a little more. Let me be crystal clear, I don't have a problem with lengthy open world games. It's just the execution of open world games recently just makes me want to... It doesn't matter if the map is huge if it just has endless amounts of the same content. If the content isn't varied and meaningful, then it's just filler. Take Skyrim for example. Yeah, I know it's not the most original pick, but stick with me. That game, you walk in a direction and you can pretty much guarantee whatever direction you walk in, something random and crazy will eventually happen. It has interesting characters and mechanics, and the way that you build your character will impact the world in different ways. Even though the map is huge and it would probably take you hundreds of hours to 100% complete, each corner of it feels like it has a purpose. Let's compare that to Far Cry 6, which is the game I completed most recently, a game in which you can approach military bases, checkpoints, and weapon stashes with a variety of weapons. However, approaching those military bases, checkpoints, and weapon stashes is the only thing you are going to do throughout the game. Now, this would be fine if the map was kind of small and compact, which I initially thought it was when I loaded up the map. But then I zoomed out and...
Oh man! Oh god! Oh man! Oh god! Oh man! Oh god! Oh man! Oh god! Oh man! Oh god!
Far Cry 6 is actually a really great example of what I mean when I say a lot of games are missing the point of what makes them cool, because its open world is meaningless and it's basically still a linear game. And when I finished it, I kind of thought, well, there are two ways they could have gone with this game that would have made it so much more interesting, but they chose neither. To catch people up, Far Cry 6 is a game where you join some rebel faction in a fictional South American country to take down some evil dictator, and you do a bunch of side missions to clear the map. And there are main missions too, but they're basically just the side missions with more scripting. And even though it has fun moments, it's largely unremarkable. However, they could have gone two different ways with this, which in my opinion would have made the game a lot more interesting. They could have gone linear and made less missions, but made them more unique with big set pieces, and had you spend more time with all of the characters in the game so you could get more invested in the story. Or they could have gone in the other direction and gone truly open world by allowing you to attack enemy bases in whichever order you wanted, while also having to manage your own rebel faction of where to place them amongst the island, and the world would dynamically react to the resources that you're taking away from the evil dictator. I think what I'm trying to say is that I think I want developers to pick a direction and then stick to it. Either provide me with the most excellently cooked 3-course meal of your choosing, or open up the buffet and let me create my own monstrous creation. Instead, what a lot of games are doing today is saying that there's a buffet and you can do what you want, but secretly it's all just egg fried rice. Two of the games I've used as examples so far have both been Ubisoft games, which are notoriously bad for this stuff, but it's even happening for games that I adore. Take Halo Infinite, for example, a game that I love because I'm a Halo fanboy, let's be honest, but still another game with a bunch of things to do that don't really feel meaningful or substantial. I don't have to tell you how excited I was at the idea of a somewhat open world Halo game that had been overrun by a bunch of enemy alien factions, and you had to take down enemy bases while also rescuing soldiers one by one so you'd have enough allies to fight back against the Banished, and also it would feature the usual bombastic Halo missions of driving this and flying that and blowing this up, but it didn't really turn out the way I expected. Halo Infinite technically had all of those elements that I just mentioned, but the execution of bringing them all together could have been a lot stronger in my opinion. I spent roughly 20 hours clearing the map of all of its activities because I thought it would impact the game in a meaningful way. In one side mission where I took down an enemy facility, the weapon turned to Chief and said, "Good job, Chief, you've just took down their ability to manufacture and repair vehicles." And after finishing that mission I thought, oh okay, that should make them a little weaker when I return to the main missions. Now I did 2 playthroughs of Halo Infinite's campaign. One on normal difficulty, where I cleared all of the map of the activities, enemies, and rescued every single soldier I could find, and another on legendary difficulty, where I basically made a beeline for all of the main missions. Do you know what the differences were between those 2 playthroughs? Nothing, nada, niente. It was exactly the same. Look, we all know I could go on and on about all of the things I wanted to see in Infinite that weren't in the campaign, like Blue Team, ODST, the Arbiter, Halsey, the Flood, Atriox, the Covenant, the Sangheili, the crew from the Spirit of Fire, the Silent Shadow, but let's be honest, that's a whole other video, and I'm not going to make that video. I might make that video. The poorly executed point that I'm trying to make here is that the problem with open world games today is that they have a bunch of activities that don't actually impact anything. I mean, yeah, they might help you level up a little quicker, and they might gain you a bunch of pointless collectibles, but they just end up wasting your time, and as somebody who is a husband and a dad with a full-time job, time is kind of a big deal to me. This is not to say that I had a bad time with any of these games. I mean, they're all fairly well made, and if you know me, then you know I've played a hell of a lot worse. At the end of the day, I don't have a problem with a lot of games taking elements of open world RPG stuff. The issue I have is when I see a wasted opportunity for a game to be something so much greater. Playing these games, it's hard not to think stuff like, what if Far Cry 6 had a developed mechanic for managing a rebel faction? What if saving Marines in Halo Infinite actually helped you fight back against the Banished? What if Cyberpunk actually ended up playable? What if Ghost of Tsushima was ambitious with its gameplay and not just its visuals? And what if the development team for Assassin's Creed, which is about 1,000 people, was split into 2 teams that could make their own more focused projects. The great thing about games is that unlike any other form of entertainment, the player gets to be involved in what is actually going on. And if all you're doing is throwing a long list of chores at them and asking them to clear a map, then you are missing the point. The focus should not be how do we keep the player in the world for as long as possible, but instead, how do we create a world that the player does not want to leave? When I see some of the great creativity and variety coming out of the indie scene right now with games such as Death's Door, Inscription, Sable, Unpacking, and then think about the eye-watering amount of money, people and resources that are just poured into these big, huge, bland, repetitive maps, I can't help but wonder just how much talent is being wasted in these teams just so people can jump on Twitter and say, hey, our game takes 500 hours to finish. Oh, and by the way, the previously mentioned 500-hour game, Dying Light 2, has now been released and apparently is a buggy and glitchy mess. But from what I've heard, even if it didn't have any bugs and glitches, it would still be a grindfest with a weak narrative. And as somebody who enjoyed the first game a lot, it kills me to see how this has turned out. This game was delayed multiple times, and I'm seeing videos of players falling through the floor for no reason at all. And as a wise man once said,
"Boss man, I don't know Wagwan, but that can't run. That can't run, man."
Developers, it is totally fine if you want to make an enormous game, but if you are going to do so, you should ask yourself a few questions, like how is our open world going to be different from the others? How are we going to encourage genuine exploration and not just the clearing of icons? But most importantly, how is making it an open world game going to better the experience for the player? And if you don't have a solid answer for all three of those questions, you should probably go back to the drawing board. Anyway, got that off my chest. If you enjoyed my ramblings, then, feel free to do all the good stuff by liking, subscribing, or if you think I'm dead wrong, feel free to jump in the comments and tell me why. That's going to do it for this video. I've been Inept Saiyan, you've been a wonderful audience, and I hope to see you next time.